I said when he got to Valley Forge that I've got to go and counsel with those who will give me counsel on how to fight the battle. And one of my favorite pictures is when George Washington goes and talks and gets advice from his leader, and you see that great picture of Valley Forge where he's bowed on his knees talking to the God of heaven, asking for strength. And I believe that that's part of the reason why we sit here today, because there were people there. And thank God there are people now that the bended knee can conquer the raised sword when God is on our side. But contending for the Constitution was not just an objective. It was not just something that was for that day. Contending for the Constitution was not just something for the men that gathered in the room in 1787. Contending for the Constitution was not about those who fought the several and numerous wars that this nation has fought. Contending for the Constitution is not just the providence of those who have gone on before us. I was reading a tremendous statement that was in Primus this week, and it's from Mike Pence, and I'd like to read Mike Pence's words before I take my seat. He says, "We owe a debt to those who came before, who did great things and suffered more than we suffered, and gave more than we gave, and pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for us, whom did not know, for we drink from wells we did not drink, rather dig, and we are warmed by fires that we did not build, and so we must be faithful in our time as they were faithful in theirs." Contending for the Constitution not only happened then, but it happens now. And as never before, I believe we who believe in the God of heaven and earth must recommit and rededicate ourselves to the proposition that it's my responsibility to maintain and to perpetuate what was done those many years ago. As we stand here at a very dangerous juncture in the history of this nation, we stand in need of those of us who have fought to commit, to keep on fighting, to keep on toiling, to keep on struggling until the reality of the Constitution that once was real becomes real again in the hearts and minds of America as never before. And know this, the God that gave the founders the Constitution is the God that will be on our side if we will acknowledge Him, if we will trust Him, and if we will walk in the truth and the power of the God of heaven and earth. We will come out once again as those that went on before us as more than conquerors as we contend for the Constitution. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor. He's a powerful speaker. I couldn't unpowerful him. But that's all right. Did anybody have any trouble hearing him in the back? Pastor, would you like to take any questions? Yeah. Could I, at this point, if anybody would like to ask Pastor a question, please feel free. Questions?
Pastor,
yes, sir.
I have read where 30% of the black people are conservatives. What is it going to take to get more than 10, 12% of the black people voting Republican?
Good question. One correction with your question. The black community is overwhelmingly conservative, but they vote contrary to their faith. And poll after poll that has been taken in America has shown that the African American community is the most conservative, believing group in America, but the water of our reality has been poisoned by political manipulation. And regrettably, it is because there's a particular party that owns the black church with your tax money. And they have encouraged the leadership of our community to believe to stand up for the very party, because see, my community is a contradiction, because and I have a talk show. Matter of fact, you can get it online here way up in Holland, WDTK 1400 on the AM dial every Saturday from 8 a.m. until 10 a.m. we are on WDTK, and I have a conservative talk show. And one of the things is it has been the corruption of our history. In the black community, if you ask the average black person who freed the slaves, they'll tell you the Democrats did. If you ask them, this is just a fact. You ask, and let me preface this before I say it, and I know there's some good God-loving Democrats, so please understand. But because this political thing has been the vehicle in which they have perverted the reality of my community, all of us pay for it. You cannot talk about what's going on in the black community without talking about the political thing that the church has been bought by a political party with your tax money by the millions of dollars for the last 3 or 4 decades. You know, California, case in point, when black folks just have to stand for their values and don't have to consider politics, we have a classic example of it in just what happened in California last year on Proposition 9, I think it is, the one about gay marriage. In California, when the black community just had to go to the polls on a social issue, reference to value, they voted overwhelmingly against gay marriages. Matter of fact, that proposition would have not passed in California if 70% of black folks had not voted that marriage should be between a man and a woman. But here's the contradiction. They turned right around a few minutes later and voted for the most same-sex marriage president in the history of the country, because then it stopped being a moral issue in their minds and became those dirty Democrats, dirty Republicans and the great Democrats. The school systems have helped give a total distortion of historical reality in the black community. If you ask who did the 13th and the 14th and the 15th amendment, not amendment, is it amendment? Yeah, the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendment, which were done by 2 radical Republicans by the name of Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner, that's not known. If you talk about why Rosa Parks was on the back of the bus, every Jim Crow law ever written was written by the Democratic Party. I challenge my brothers and sisters listening to me on the radio. I said, how can you forgive the Democratic Party for fighting for slavery, and you can't forgive the Republican Party for fighting for your freedom?